Erotic store employees. What are some interesting stories/excuses people have given when buying toys/equipment? I had a husband come in looking for a vibe with an extra long handle. He kept insisting longer, whenever I would show him a model. So I finally asked why the necessity of length. He told me his wife had really let herself go and he needed a long handle so he wouldn't have to get close to her. Story 2. I had a guy who would come in once every 2 weeks or so and he would buy around 10 to 20 movies. And then not much else. At least one of the movies would always be one from our gay section, which always prompted him to explain to me he was from a state where you couldn't buy adult content legally, so he would buy it for multiple friends, one of which who happened to be gay. I didn't really care and always just said something like, "Oh, that's nice." The best sale I ever had was a man who bought a few movies, a couple pocket kitties, and a life-sized fake butt. His ticket came to about $1,300. It was right at the end of the night. I helped him carry it to his car. Yes, the butt was that big. Included thighs and part of torso. He left and I closed up for the night. The next day, my manager asked about the sale and I told him the story. He informed me the man called and said he bought a couple of movies and that was it, and demanded the rest of the charges be removed from his card. He said it was probably a bad case of buyer's remorse. I still got my commission and never heard about it again. Story 3. One sticks out in my mind. We had a woman in her 60s to 70s that came in and bought an excessive amount of DVDs. They were all different kinds too. Hetero, homo, kink, everything. I was so caught off guard that I started talking to her about free sites. But she said her son prefers DVDs. I must have given her an odd look, so she elaborated. And she said her son was mentally challenged and had been inappropriate in the past. So she bought him the movies and no more incidents. I didn't believe her until she came back in a week later with her son. I spent the next 2 years seeing them every 2 weeks or so. She started coming in and handing me cash and would go sit in the car while he made his selections. He was nonverbal and I would have to help him pick out the movies and filter anything that looked particularly aggressive as per her request to me. I eventually started keeping DVDs to the side for him and would give him the free promotional DVDs and sample lubes we'd get. Now, okay, the psychology part of my brain is like, this is treating the symptom, not the issue. The other part of my brain is like, you know what? If it's not hurting anyone and it's solving the problem, I guess. That poor mother, though, must have had to go through some rough things in life. Story 4. I used to work at an adult novelty store. We sold all sorts of things from SFW stuff like jewelry and masks to NSFW stuff like 2-foot-long double-sided dongs. Most people didn't find the need to make an excuse for what they were buying. There were 3 types of customers. We would have the regulars, usually men in their 60s or older who would come in for a few DVDs and some enhancement pills. They don't talk much, just in and out. We would get the college kids in for a laugh. They'd wander around the store for an hour touching everything and usually leave without buying anything. If they did, it was always a gag gift. Then there were the professionals, either performing drag queens, strippers, or professional doms. They were my favorite. They were kind, polite, and always knew exactly what they wanted. Story 5. My first wife used to sell adult toys. She'd go to conventions with other toy sellers and distributors. One of the sellers had a market surrounded by 3 colleges, one of them Ivy League. She said that she had so many college-aged women who didn't know how anything worked down there, and so she started carrying pamphlets for Planned Parenthood. So this is your body, 12 facts about your cycle, and other honest-to-goodness educational materials. Women would ask her for medical questions, and she would have to explain what a gynecologist was for. "Honey, I just sell glowing rubbers and dongs shaped like tentacled dinosaurs. You need to ask a real medical professional these questions." And this was in 2009. Story 6. Not a worker, but a customer. I wandered into one and asked for the most embarrassing, inappropriate gag gift to give a guy at his bachelor's party. Many years ago, someone told me that you could buy an inflatable sheep at these stores, so I was hoping to find something like that. Or maybe a horse rear you could screw, or the world's smallest dong pump. The cashier looked at me very strangely and suspiciously and said they don't sell anything like that. I don't think she believed it was a gag gift. Or maybe it's just a weird thing to carry. Like, I don't think adult stores tend to carry stuff that could get them shut down, you know? I don't know the actual laws on it, but even anything representing animals is weird, right? I guess it can't be illegal because, like, the horse don't... You know what? I might be self-reporting too much here. Moving on. Story 7. I worked at a hospital, but the story is NSFW and he was using a toy. As an X-ray tech, I saw several weird X-rays. One in particular was an action figure inside a man's rectum. As I handed him the X-rays, he says, "Well, I'm sure you saw the X-rays and have questions. I was playing with my daughter in the bathroom and slipped, and I fell right on the dang thing." I remained silent, but my first thought was, why are you playing with your daughter naked? Of all the cover stories possible, this one, just don't even bother. They know what you're saying. Just say it. Story 9. Not me, but a buddy of mine worked at a smut shop for a few years a long time ago. He's got tons of stories, but my favorite one was when he was working and this older guy came in to buy a bunch of gay adult content and rent some videos. After the guy paid, he left and went home, called the store and asked for my friend by description. My buddy answered and the guy said he would give him $40 for his underwear. I asked him, well, what the hell did you do? I stripped those bastards off in the bathroom, threw them in a plastic bag, and gave them to that idiot for $40. He never saw the guy again, and he has some more awesome stories about other people, but I always liked that one. Now that is an enterprising man. There's some people who have no corner of their soul they wouldn't turn over for a few dollars. And you know what? They're go-getters in life. Story 10. This isn't me, but it's a story I read way back in the olden days before even web-based message boards existed and you used email message boards. So a dude worked at a smaller video rental store back in the day. They didn't have enough staff to have someone just watching the adult section, which was separated off in its own restricted room. They had had a lot of trouble with people going in there, seeing that they were alone, and pleasuring themselves to the box covers. So they installed a security camera and an intercom/PA system so that whoever was working the front could keep an eye on things. And they could also tell people to knock it off if they tried anything funny. Well, one day our dude was working the front when he caught someone acting suspicious on the cam. When pervert looked around and started reaching into his pants, employee hit the PA button and yelled, "Put it down!" Perv jumped out of his skin when suddenly the voice of God rang out of nowhere telling him to put the adult content down. He went tearing out of there like a scolded dog. Story 11. Customer here. Had an awkward conversation with the poor gal behind the counter. I was looking for a good male massager, but wanted to know if she had any recommendations. I was previously ripped off through some recommendations online that turned out to be cheap Chinese pieces of junk. The product pages artificially bolstered by botnets and fake reviews. The most pleasure the device gave me was the comedy gold of its English instruction booklet. So I wanted a human's perspective, someone who actually handles these kinds of things daily. So I say, something that won't die after a month. I trust your judgment over internet reviews. Tried a couple recommended products online and got burned both times. Oh, wow, she reels in surprise. I'm sorry to hear that. Did you have to see a doctor? If there's one thing I love about adult shop workers, they have a fantastic way to make me not feel like the most awkward person in the room, bless her heart. I was tempted to leave them a 5-star Google Guides review using my real email address to really emphasize how grateful I was. Story 12. I've got a story that sort of fits this thread. At an auto shop in a sketchy neighborhood, one of my employees used to leave his windows down all day when parked on the street, despite repeated warnings. No idea how he never lost his radio. I finally came up with a diabolical plan to rid him of this habit before he suffered a theft and passive-aggressively blamed the workplace. Tasked my manager with stopping at an erotic store right along her way with purchasing the cheapest blow-up doll you sell for a prank. Got a real beauty for under $20 with printed-on fishnets and an undignified-looking mouth. Next afternoon, I poked an air hose out the side of the building and blew her up. Then went to carry her across the street through a bunch of cars waiting at the signal. Everyone looked on with interest and amusement as I pantomimed, "Shh," and settled her into the driver's seat of his car. Then I went back and with mock seriousness said, "Monty, there's a lady in your car." He already suspected something fishy, so he wandered out with no special urgency in his step as everyone else followed to watch. It was hilarious watching him try to deflate her as quickly as possible, squeezing and pushing in variants of spooning and the Heimlich maneuver, while another wave of signal waiters enjoyed the spectacle. Then he did the march of shame back, trying to look angry at me without success. He never did leave his car open and unlocked again, though. I don't even know what a $20 blow-up doll would look like, but I can't imagine it's anything good. That must have been a pretty good show, OP. And a valuable life lesson, too. Story 13. I think I may have actually embarrassed the clerk last time I went down to Ye Olde Romantics. I needed a new vibe because mine had died like 6 months ago. I was deliberating trying something different for like 10 minutes before I said screw it and got the same model. I got up to the register and she checked it all out and offered for me to test it myself. Oh no, I'm good, I've owned this model before. I said that as she put her own hand against the surface and immediately had an oh crap expression. The low setting is the only one I use, but some people used to really weak vibrations are probably shocked by it. She asked if anything else had piqued my interest. I said, kinda. I think I'm just kinda happy with this one though. My old one lasted 2 years before the motor burned out. She was clearly holding in giggles and definitely laughed as she offered me my receipt, and was red in the cheeks. Like, Miss Lady, why are you working in an adult shop if comments of that caliber are enough to make you snort? Story 14. I've worked at an adult store for the last 5 years. If a customer feels the need to make an excuse for what they're buying, it's rarely an interesting one. Usually they say it's a gag gift. but some of the bigger fake dongs are over $100 US, so it would be a lot of money to spend on a joke. I always tell them once they pay for it, I really couldn't care less what they do with it. The one time I did care was when a really weird guy came in saying he wanted a huge butt plug to assault his wife with because he had caught her drinking. I told him I wouldn't sell him anything if I thought he was going to hurt someone with it, and he left. I like to pride myself on making the customer feel as comfortable as possible. I would never shame someone for their kink. First, because I'm not a jerk, but also because that's just going to cost me sales. So whatever the customer is looking for, I'm here for it. Let's talk about it. You into pegging? Great. I'll give you 20% off if you get a toy with the strap on. You into water sports? Hey, why not? We have open mouth gags and this cool little stool with an opening so she can squat right over you and let it fly. You like to wear panties and lingerie? Oh, just remember to go a size up for women's wear. If you're normally a medium, get a large. If you're normally a small, get a medium, etc. You need a good vibe? Alright, 3 things you want to look out for are, is it silicone? Is it rechargeable? Does it have a warranty? I run a shame-free environment when I'm working. I feel like that should be the mantra for anyone who works in an adult store, no? Like, I've never been in one myself personally, but the vibe should just be like, we all know why we're there, right? Just like, don't judge. Story 15. One day my girlfriend and I were frisky, and our fingers could only do so much. Since I had recently moved to a new state, I wasn't quite as familiar with the area and I didn't know by memory where the nearest adult store would be located. We relied on my Maps app to take us to our destination. However, it didn't take us to a place where we could buy as many fake dongs as we could ever want. It instead told me to go into a freaking military base. I ended up pulling up to the gate area where some guys in camo asked us if we had a visitor's pass. I was honest with him and told him, yeah, I have no idea where I am. I'm just following my Maps program and it told me to come here. The young man then asked me where I was going. I tried to respond with a vague answer, but he kept persisting. I'm a bit too awkward to tell this dude where 2 young lesbians were trying to go, and eventually he asked, "Are you looking for the arts and crafts place nearby?" We said yes, and that answer was good enough for him. We turned around and found the right place, which was closed anyway. Story 16. Not mine, but a family friend that worked at an adult store where they sold toys. They had all the normal stuff you'd expect at a shop, including a selection of various sized plugs. Now, normally they didn't judge, but they had this novelty plug that was, as they said, I kid you not, the size of a dinner plate, that everyone would laugh at and then buy something more reasonably sized. Until one day, this stereotypical guy trying to keep a low profile came in and avoided everyone, until there were no other customers in the building. Then went up and said in practically a whisper, "I want that plug there." Okay, which one would you like? The big one. This one? No, I mean the big one. He bought it and left. And again, my friend was not one to judge, but even they were going, how the hell was this guy not crapping himself while walking if his butt was that loose? Story 17. Not an employee, but a customer. I have a deformity where I was born without a cervix and a malformed uterus. This resulted in my kitty being more like a pouch that needs to be expanded through dilators and such. My boyfriend and I went to a blue boutique, an adult shop, of course. Don't know if it's only here in my state or not, to look around. We go into the section with all the toys and such, and since it was dead, the lady in charge, maybe mid-20s, and I have a conversation. And I asked what she would recommend for someone with my deformity because if I'm gonna sit for 30 minutes with something up my hoo-ha, I want to at least enjoy it a little. My doctors have rarely seen this deformity and didn't give nearly as much info on banging as this lady did. Though I wasn't mainly focused on banging since I was single at the time, so She gave me advice, at least 20 minutes of foreplay, oh boy, and showed me a vibe that had different vibration patterns and the vibrations were soft so it wouldn't hurt me more than I would already be forcing myself to expand down there. We apologized for the weird conversation and she said that it hadn't been the first time she had to talk with ladies with small or deformed kitties. Sorry if this isn't so interesting, but it was to me since so few people have heard of this deformity. Story 18. Back when I was in college, I needed a job and no one would hire me because I lacked experience. And at that time, if you applied to McDonald's, you had over 50 other college students applying, so I couldn't get anything. Then I saw an ad in the papers for store clerk. I went to apply, and yes, it was my first time stepping into an adult store. Got hired right away. They paid $10 an hour plus commission. That was great for the time. It was the early 90s. 1. Had a guy come in from the bar next door complaining to me about how he couldn't just get laid. He's ranting to me about how in Mexico he would only need to spend $20 to get laid, but not here. Kept going on and on, so I said, there's gotta be at least one girl who would sleep with you, right? Just keep looking. Then he looks at me seriously and says, no, I'm talking about young Latino guys. Don't get me wrong. I'm not gay. I hate gays. I'm just into Latino guys. 2. Guy comes in, buys a dong pump, rents one of our video viewing rooms, and they can rent a video and then rent a room, and then I'd put the video on, and then they watch it in the room. After the video was done, he brought out the used pump and asked for a refund. 3. Guy comes in, looks at dirty magazines, and I'm watching him from the counter. After a couple, I see him stick his hands under his sweater and pulls it down. Clearly, he had hidden something under his sweater, so I go out and asked him to please put back the magazine. He kept saying he's not stealing any magazines. So I said, "No, I saw you looking at our magazine, then put it under your sweater. Pull out your hands and let's see." His hands were still under his sweater too. Finally, he says, "I was not friggin' stealing anything. I was trying to hide my heart on." Pulls his hands out and sure enough, he's pitching a tent and nothing else was under his sweater. I had to apologize. 4. There was this lady who brought her 70-year-old mother in to get something. The mother was going out on a date. It's been a while. They asked me what's a good toy that a couple could use together. We had this thing that was a long bar with a pocket kitty on one end and a vibrating fake dong on the other. It's been sitting on the shelf for a long time because it was so expensive. So I told them this was our most popular product for couples and this was the last one. They bought it. On a side note, I was somewhat truthful, since that was our only item for couples in the entire store. So obviously, there was nothing for couples that would have been more popular. 5. Had a trans lady come into the store a couple times with different guys. Then one time she comes in with this one guy, they go behind one of our video stands and she goes down on him. No one was around and I was in shock. I didn't know what to do, so I just let them finish. I mean, what are you supposed to do? I don't want to go in there and stop two frisky people from doing that. Frisky people can be dangerous, or just weird. I'd much rather just kick them out afterwards and deal with that way. Although admittedly, I also am not bold enough to work in an adult store, so maybe I'm not the right person to ask. Story 19. I worked at a Spencer's in Ontario. And as you know, they have an adult section. Some guy, I would say around 18, 19, picks up a dong pump and keeps staring at me. So I walk up and ask if he needs help. He, with a straight face, said, "I'm already huge. How much bigger will this make me?" After that, he proceeded to ask me out. Another time, I sold a vibe in the shape of a lipstick to my fiance's mother, in front of him. Story 20. Not employee, but my own experience. The first time I went to an adult store, I decided to buy a small set of beads and some magazines. This was around 2010, so I had internet and I just wanted something to aim at. I get to the counter and go to grab my wallet. Only it isn't there, so I tell the lady I'll be right back. I must have left it in the car. I get to my car and there on my seat is my wallet and my keys. I've locked my keys and my wallet in the car outside of an adult shop. I go back in, explain what has happened. I ask if she has any wire hangers or anything I can use to break into my car. Only thing she has is a fly swatter, which she won't give me because it's her only one. She calls her boss to see if it's okay for me to take it. Her boss just laughs and says it's okay as long as I replace it. I spend the next 2 hours trying to break into the car while I get to see the rainbow of people, some I knew, go into the shop. I did eventually unlock my car, pay for my items, and drive to the dollar store a block away, and bought the counter lady a 3-pack of swatters. Getting stranded outside of an adult store is definitely one of the worst places it could happen, OP. But you can take solace in knowing that anyone who saw you there, you can also say, "Well, I saw you there too." And it's like a Cold War. Neither of you can say anything about it. So, on that front, you're probably fine. Anyway, these were a bunch of really interesting and just fun stories for the most part. So I hope you enjoyed them as much as I did. I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next one.